CD Projekt Red is making 2 Witcher games, The Elder Scrolls 6 release date, and how the First Berserker outshined Miyazaki's games. CD Projekt Red has confirmed that both the remake of the first Witcher game and The Witcher 4 are being developed simultaneously. Both titles are being built on Unreal Engine 5, with some technical solutions being shared across both games. The CEO of Cdpr mentioned that the team working on the remake is temporarily contributing to The Witcher 4's production. However, the majority of the studio's resources are focused on the development of the fourth Witcher game, with over 400 people currently involved. As a result, the remake is expected to be released after the fourth installment. The developers also revealed that the Witcher remake will feature an open-world structure and will be reimagined according to modern gaming standards. Significant work is being done on Unreal Engine 5 to adapt it for dynamic RPG mechanics and to create a world on par with The Witcher 3. One more big update about The Witcher 4 is that it won't be released before 2027. This was stated by CD Projekt Red's chief financial officer in a report to investors. The game's active development began at the end of 2024. At the same time, it's important to understand that this is just a preliminary date given to investors, not a final release window. So the development could take many more years, and the game might come out much later than planned. Besides, the developers don't really have a reason to rush. In 2024 alone, the company earned $120 million in net profit without releasing a single game. So let's hope they'll be able to properly handle the power of Unreal Engine 5 and that the game will be at least somewhat optimized and not in the same disastrous technical state as Cyberpunk was at launch. That said, I'm insanely hyped for The Witcher 4. In general, CD Projekt's games are some of the most anticipated for me in the entire gaming industry. These are some of the few games I have actually upgraded my PC for, just to experience them in all their beauty. The announcement of the new part of The Elder Scrolls happened 7 years ago, and since then players haven't received any new information about the game. But since the whole 7 years have passed, many expected that during this time, developers would have at least done something and that we'd soon see new trailers or at least hints about the release. However, just recently new job listings appeared on Bethesda's website, which suggest that the game is likely still in the early stages of development. The thing is, they posted several openings for a senior quest designer and a junior quest designer. Their work will involve creating open-world content like telling engaging stories, writing branching dialogues, designing quests, and so on. The point is, traditionally quest design happens during the earliest stages of development, because it's the story and narrative that the entire core gameplay and structure of the game is built around. And this could mean that we might see the new Witcher game before the next Elder Scrolls. And judging by everything, we probably won't be seeing any major updates about the game anytime soon. According to insider information, the remake of The Elder Scrolls 4 Oblivion could be released in the near future. The insider isn't entirely sure about the exact release date, but claims that it is expected within the next few weeks. If the information turns out to be true, Bethesda will make a surprise announcement with instant access to the game. Earlier, other resources had reported that this wouldn't be just a graphical update, but a full-fledged remake. The systems have been reworked, with the major gameplay mechanics changed to make the gameplay feel more modern while still preserving the atmosphere of the original. That said, there is still no official confirmation from the developer. Well, considering we'll have to wait a long time for the next Elder Scrolls, I think fans will be pleased. Many of those who never played the older titles, myself included, will finally be able to experience the classics. Because let's be honest, trying to play the original versions today can be quite painful. On March 27, the first Berserker Khazan was released, and many didn't expect anything good from yet another Souls-like. After all, Mr. Miyazaki had long ago established complete dominance in this genre, and getting anywhere near his level is pretty tough for most developers. However, to everyone's surprise, the new Berserker received very positive reviews, both from critics and players. On Steam, it currently has 91% positive reviews. Players are praising how the game blends the feel of nostalgic hack-and-slash titles like Darksiders, Dante's Inferno, and Devil May Cry, combining all of that while incorporating the precise, parry-heavy combat of Sekiro and the punishing design of the Soulsborne genre. The combat is brutal, challenging, and incredibly rewarding for those who persevere. Boss fights are intense, pushing your skills to the limit with their thrilling mechanics. Personally, I found Khazan even harder than recent Soulsborne games, making every victory feel truly satisfying. I watched a review of the game, and honestly, it seemed to me that in some ways it's even more interesting than the classic Souls-like titles from Miyazaki, because even though it still has core Souls-like mechanics, it feels way more dynamic. The character is super responsive, blocking happens instantly, very similar to Sekiro in that regard. Meanwhile, if you you take something like Elden Ring, the character isn't very responsive, he reacts slowly to your inputs. In that game, you can't rely 100% on your reflexes because the character is slow and you have to literally memorize the boss's entire moveset to be able to predict and react in advance. I can't say that this is a truly skill-based mechanic because it's more about memorizing the patterns than actually improving your reflexes or timing. In the First Berserker Khazan, players are given the chance to build real skill, reaction time, dodging, timing, and the character executes everything very responsively and quickly. The game was made on Unreal Engine 4 and is pretty well optimized. At 2K resolution without DLSS, the old 3060 still gives around 60 FPS, which is really good for a game released in 2025. Personally, I'm going to wait for a discount and then jump in and play through it. In just a couple of days, South of Midnight will be released, and I remember the trailer really well because it looked like another WoW game. It felt a lot like another product from the infamous Sweet Baby Inc. It reminded me of Dustborn, which, as you know, turned out to be a total disaster and completely flopped. Even on Metacritic there was some who really praised Dustborn, but of course it turned out to be a complete mess that I wouldn't recommend watching even on YouTube if you care about your mental health. However, South of Midnight has received a lot of positive reviews, with many giving the game a score of over 90. I don't know why I still bother reading critic reviews on Metacritic because it doesn't make much sense. There have been so many times when they praised absolute trash games that flopped, games that disrespected their players, and conversely, when they bashed good games. In essence, these critics and game journalists are just regular people like any other player, but with one condition: they are influenced by a lot of factors. For example, they can't express their opinion as sharply and openly as I do, or any other player can. So from this perspective, their reviews don't hold much value. That's why it's much more important to wait for the release and look at players' ratings. And even then, positive player reviews on Steam don't necessarily mean that you will like the game. So the best way to decide whether to buy a game is to find an influencer with similar taste to yours, preferably one who is honest and not biased, and base your decisions on their reviews. But in any case, I'll be looking forward to seeing what the players think of this game. Not long ago I made a video about gameplay leaks for the new Battlefield. Just a little time passed and data miners found new information in the files of the game's test version. They discovered several mechanics and interface elements related to a battle royale mode, which is highly likely to appear in the new game. I have no idea what's going on inside the developer's studio, but it seems suspicious to me that there are constant and regular leaks of information about the upcoming game, especially considering the large gameplay leak. It's strange that the developers hasn't taken any action to secure their information. There are two possibilities here: either they are so incompetent that they can't control these leaks, or the second option is that they are leaking the information themselves on purpose to warm up the players and start building hype for the new game, to see how many people are interested in its release. So it's a kind of free marketing campaign that raises expectations for the new game. Recently, PC Gamer released an article complaining that the world of Inzoi is terribly heterosexual and that the clear lack of gay characters is a known issue. Players were left scratching their heads for a bit, but Inzoi Studio has acknowledged the void where same-sex relationships should be. The author of this article claims that players were confused. While any game can have its flaws, players encountered one of the most significant ones. Yes, according to the author, you can still create a gay character by setting romantic preferences for any character you create. However, the problem is that gay characters cannot appear naturally, and same-sex relationships with them are impossible. Of course, you can have gay characters in the game by manually creating a pair that is already in relationship, but if you hope that your simulated characters would find same-sex love on their own, that's absent in the game. And seriously, I have only one question: is this really such a big problem that it deserves an entire article on one of the most read video game websites? I don't think most players care about this at all. The absolute majority doesn't give a damn about the lack of same-sex relationships in the game. When will all these fake journalists understand that people come to games for fun, not for their political statements? Furthermore, I don't want to state the obvious, but any video game is a creative product, and the developer, as its creator, has every right to implement their vision within the game, no matter what it may be. Well, the author of this article disagrees. He says that despite developers recognize the problem in game, the fundamental barrier in a simulation of everyday life, like this one, significantly discourages players. One of the Reddit users responded to this: "I haven't bought the game yet when I read about it, waiting for the patch, and then once everything is super gay, I'm going in." Seriously, yes, this is the main problem of the game that should be loudly discussed right now. This is exactly what developers need to fix first. What about optimization issues? It's well known that that the game has significant problems in this area, and not only does it have very high system requirements, but even with them the game doesn't show the best performance. But that's not all. Then the author of this article says the following: it's not slowed the game's roll down much though, as its release has gone surprisingly well despite the hitches and the fact that the game left us feeling rather cold. Come on gamers, admit it honestly, the presence of gay characters is the first thing that you check before buying any game. It's somewhere a mandatory feature of any modern game. If it's missing, clearly no one will buy that game. I find it strange that Inzo is sold so well despite the lack of gay characters in the game. By all laws of the universe, this game should have failed. Apparently the developers somehow managed to deceive gamers and trick them into buying a game with no gay characters, selling it to millions of people who don't need it. These days, the vast majority of gaming journalists consider it normal to openly declare their political positions, which I find completely unnecessary and uninteresting from a gaming perspective, because gaming is about fun, not politics. When people like Justin Wagner dedicate an entire article to this and claim that the lack of gay characters is the biggest issue in a very successful Asian game, I have many questions. As you know, Ubisoft is currently in a rather bad state, and I was frankly surprised by what the developers are doing while their company is on the brink of survival. It turns out that Ubisoft released a patch for the 11-year-old game Far Cry 4, and it's not just any patch, it's a 5 GB patch, which is quite substantial for a game that's over a decade old. The most notable thing that players observed was that Ubisoft censored female nudity by adding bras to some characters who were previously topless. According to the game's lore, these characters were worshippers of a goddess who, according to legends, was topless. When I first saw this news, I was really angry. It seemed like a very hype-driven and strange story. I thought that developers are trying to show their love to woke culture once again by changing the game that is 11 years old. What is wrong with you people? But then, unexpectedly, the official Twitter account of Ubisoft posted the following statement. To clarify, the update was the result of a mistake during deployment. Content intended specifically for the Japanese version of the game was accidentally pushed to the global Steam version, they said. They continued, the team has since corrected the error by re-uploading the proper global files to Steam. If players are still seeing anything unusual, restarting Steam and checking for updates should resolve it. Just to reassure everyone, there are no plans to censor Far Cry. This was purely original packaging error and has now been fully addressed. Well, you know, this still sounds very suspicious considering what Asian games are releasing nowadays and what characters they have. Why do you decide to censor Asian region 11 years after release? That is suspicious. These news reassured gamers and now they're celebrating. And if you watch this video until this point, it probably deserves a like.